Well, you're going to have longer because I won't be here on Thursday. So I'm on Wednesday. Michelle should have stayed away an extra week.
Boycott the school.
Anyway, last time, if you remember, way back when, we were talking about metamorphosis. And it's just a series of changes that take place in the development of amphibians. So it involves the structure of the animals, their physiology, biochemistry, and behavior. All right? And we have three broad categories of changes that occur. You have regressions, transformations, and developments. So the regressions were structures that were used or needed by that larva and not needed by the adult, so they gradually disappear. Things like gills. Transformations, you're going to take something that's there and modify it for life on land. The stomach, for example, is just a transformation of the digestive tract. Development. So development are structures that are not needed by the larvae, but they're needed by that adult living on the land. Something like legs would be the example, an example of development. All right? And when we looked at the anurans, because we spent most of our time on them, the differences that you see in the structure, the physiology, the biochemistry, the behavior, are really related to three main differences in their lifestyle. So that larva is aquatic, whereas the adult is terrestrial. The larva of an anuran is an herbivorous filter feeder, whereas the adults are going to be carnivorous. They're going to be eating entire worms, eating entire insects, etc. And then, of course, non-reproductive versus reproductive. We can look at the time course of metamorphosis and divide it into three stages. And these are pre-metamorphosis, pro-metamorphosis, and climax. Important to remember that they're not equal in duration. Okay? Climax typically is very quick. Pre-metamorphosis can last a long time, perhaps even a couple of years. Pro-metamorphosis is going to be in the middle. So pre-metamorphosis is primarily larval growth is occurring. Pro-metamorphosis, we're still getting larval growth, but we're starting to get metamorphic changes. Climax, rapid change leading to that adult form. And then we finished up with looking at salamander tadpoles versus anurans because there are some structural differences. So it should be easy for you to identify salamander versus tadpoles. First off, the salamanders had 3 pairs of functional gills, whereas the anurans typically had 2. There might be a third rudimentary pair there, but there's only 2 well-formed functional pairs in frogs and toads and 3 in the salamanders. The forelegs are always visible in a salamander, whereas in the frogs and toads, those developing forelegs are hidden behind the operculum. So they're in that little cavity along with the gills. Wide mouth versus an oval mouth. So the salamander larvae are carnivorous, so they have a different mouth structure than those herbivorous filter feeders, which are the anurans. And then their basic structure, when you look at them, they're elongate like a salamander, as opposed to being globose when you typically think of a frog or toad tadpole. Okay? So some fundamental differences. Any questions on all that stuff? I don't think so. Okay. All right. I want to look a little bit more at metamorphosis and look at the hormonal control of metamorphosis. What's going on internally with this animal? Right. So we're going to talk about hormones. What is a hormone? What's the definition of a hormone?
Is it
chemical that gets sent somewhere to make something happen?
in the
Sure.
bloodstream?
In the bloodstream, yes. So there's 2 ways of communicating inside an animal's body. You communicate by electricity through the nerves, or you communicate by chemicals, and those are hormones. So a hormone is going to be manufactured in one part of the body, released into the bloodstream, and it'll travel someplace else in the body where it will have an effect. It will send a message to some other part of the body to do something. All right, so it's just a different way of communicating. Chemicals instead of electricity. And metamorphosis in a frog involves the interplay of 4 different hormones, 4 different chemical messengers. Okay, these are thyroid stimulating hormone releasing factor. That's all one chemical. Oops. Thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroxine. Often abbreviated T4. And one called prolactin. Okay. All right, these are the hormones we're going to be talking about. Where are they coming from? So this would be the brain up here, and this is hanging down below the brain. This region is called the hypothalamus. What's hanging down there like a grape? Yeah, this is the pituitary gland. So it really does look like that. It looks like a grape hanging on a stem beneath the hypothalamus. And there's 2 main parts to it. There's an anterior pituitary and a posterior pituitary. Take a physiology class and you're going to go into a lot of detail on what goes on in the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Lots of hormones are being manufactured by those 2 parts of the brain and then dumped into the bloodstream. Okay, so we're talking about metamorphosis. We're going to be talking about these 4 hormones, and they're all involved in this area of the brain. Okay, so first off, what's going to go on? Well, we are going to have high levels of prolactin during pre-metamorphosis. So we have this period of growth of the larvae, pre-metamorphosis. We have the pituitary gland producing large amounts of prolactin. Prolactin has 2 effects. First off, it is going to promote growth. So in the presence of prolactin, you get growth of the individual. Simultaneously, prolactin inhibits metamorphic changes. So it's promoting growth, inhibiting metamorphosis. So during pre-metamorphosis, that makes sense. It's a period of larval growth. No metamorphic changes of any degree are going on. Right? That's because the pituitary gland is producing prolactin. It's released into the bloodstream. The cells respond by dividing. We get growth, but we inhibit the metamorphic changes. Okay. The hypothalamus controls the release of chemicals from the pituitary, particularly the anterior pituitary, and that's where prolactin is made. Okay? When that tadpole is growing during this period of pre-metamorphosis, the circulatory connections between the hypothalamus and the pituitary are not fully formed yet. So the pituitary is acting on its own, if you will, and releasing that prolactin, which gives us our growth. But as development proceeds, we get the circulatory connections between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary. And that's where the next hormone comes into play, which is thyroid-stimulating hormone releasing factor. Factors are just really hormones. There's chemicals released into the bloodstream. They're made in the hypothalamus. They're going to travel just this short distance down to the pituitary, where they're going to have an effect. There's lots of different ones. We're concerned with thyroid-stimulating hormone releasing factor. Well, this chemical is going to have two effects as well. The first thing that it's going to do is it's going to signal the pituitary to stop making prolactin. And it's going to tell the pituitary to release thyroid-stimulating hormone. Abbreviate that as TSH, this one often as TRF, thyroid releasing factor. Okay. Pre-metamorphosis, larval growth is going on. It's being promoted by large, high levels of prolactin in the blood. As development proceeds, we get the connection from the hypothalamus to the pituitary complete, and now thyroid-stimulating releasing factor from the hypothalamus goes down to the pituitary and starts telling it to stop making prolactin. So our growth is going to slow. At the same time, it tells the pituitary to release TSH, thyroid-stimulating hormone. That gets dumped into the blood. It goes to the thyroid gland, and it tells the thyroid gland to release its hormone, which is called thyroxine. Why is it abbreviated T4? Anybody know what the 4 is for? What's unusual about thyroxine? Yeah, it has iodine. And so the T4 is just a molecule that has 4 atoms of iodine in it. All right, so now we have another hormone coming into play from the thyroid gland, thyroxine. It gets dumped into the bloodstream, and it has 2 effects. One, it's going to stimulate metamorphosis. And 2, very low levels, it signals the hypothalamus to produce more TRF, thyroid stimulating releasing factor. Stimulates metamorphosis in the body, tells the hypothalamus to produce more TRF. Okay, remember what TRF ends up doing? Is it ends up promoting more TSH, which promotes more thyroxine, which causes metamorphosis. This is a positive feedback loop so that we can get a rapid buildup in thyroxine. Because thyroxine tells the hypothalamus to release more TRF, which then causes the pituitary to release more TSH, which then causes the thyroid to release more T4, which causes metamorphosis. So we talked about climax being this period of rapid change. It's a period of rapid change because we get a rapid buildup in the amount of thyroxine in the blood because of this positive feedback loop. So, graphically,